Hello, I'm Maria Carreira, and in this presentation, we're going to tell you about community-based heritage language schools. And I'd like to start out by introducing you to our panelists, Joy Kreeft-Payton and Tommy Liu. Let me start with Joy. Joy Kreeft-Payton, Dr. Joy Kreeft-Payton is co-founder and team leader of the Coalition of Community-Based Heritage Schools and a senior fellow at the Center for Applied Linguistics in Washington, D.C. Her research focuses on ways that community-based heritage language schools do and can contribute to language use and strength and to the national language enterprise, as well as challenges that they face and ways that they can be sustained, improved, and more engaged with public and private schools. Joy has done it all. Here are just a few of the things she has done. She is co-editor of Heritage Languages in America, Preserving a National Resource, Handbook Heritage, Community, and Native American Languages in the United States, Research, Educational Practice, and Policy, and the special issue of the Heritage Language Journal, published by the National Heritage Language Resource Center at UCLA. And the special issue was on the vitality of heritage languages in the United States. And now moving on to Dr. Tommy Liu. He has been working closely with community-based Chinese heritage language schools and organizations for over 20 years. He has served a variety of positions, including teacher, principal, president, and local, regional, and national Chinese heritage language associations. Again, he has done it all. He has also served as co-chair of the ACTFL Heritage Language Special Interest Group, and he's now serving as a core team leader and a language representative at the Coalition of Community-Based Heritage Language Schools, which includes all heritage languages in the United States. He's also a member of America's Language Working Group of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, advisor of Asia Society, and the Washington Metropolitan Association of Chinese Schools. And Dr. Liu is currently serving as Department Chair of Information Technologies at Delaware Technical Community College in Wilmington, Delaware. So welcome, Joy and Tommy.
Thank you for having us, Maria.
My pleasure. This is a very important topic. Something our listeners may not know is that 27% of school-age children in the United States speak a language other than English at home. So if we can get the 27% to be fluent in another language, we will vastly increase our language capacity in the world, in the nation, and make these children more connected to their parents, their communities, etc., and make us a stronger nation at that. So let's start out with our questions. And I'm going to give Joy the first question. Joy, let's start out with the basics. So what are community language, heritage language schools? Are they new, or is this something that has existed for a while? And do they only exist in the United States?
Okay, thank you. These schools teach a specific language, which is often not taught or even recognized in the public school that the students go to. They're often founded and run by parents or members of a language community who want their own children or all of the children who speak the language at home and in that community to maintain and develop their language proficiency and cultural knowledge throughout the school years. Most of these are weekend schools, 3 to 5 hours on Saturday or Sunday, and they're held in rented spaces often, public schools, churches, mosques, temples, public libraries. I just learned recently that there are 2 community-based schools meeting in the high school that's just a block away from me. And of course, they invited me to come and visit, but I didn't know they were meeting there. Also, the schools actually are not new. There were community-based German schools in the 1800s So community-based schools in the early years of this country, I think it would be absolutely fascinating at some point to do a history of the schools in the different languages. When did you start here in the United States? Why did you start? What did that look like? How have you evolved? Where are you going next? Wouldn't that be a fascinating study to do?
I'm signing on for that one. That's fantastic.
Yeah, that would be great. So there are thousands of these schools now across the United States teaching hundreds of languages. So in the 1960s, Joshua Fishman, in a national survey, identified over 1,800 schools. In the 1980s, he identified over 6,500 schools. And in a paper that he gave at our second annual conference, he said that these schools are a strong component of the language learning enterprise. Unfortunately, a comprehensive survey of these schools has not been conducted since Joshua Fishman's in the 1980s. But it's probable that there are more schools now than what he identified. But as you know, many of them are struggling during this period of COVID restrictions, and they're trying to figure out their next steps. But I don't think they have closed. I think they're still going. Okay, next slide. My slide advance. Okay, can you see my next slide now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so at this point, we in the coalition, through Tommy's efforts, have documented nearly 400 schools teaching 37 languages. And those are the languages that we've documented with the number of schools that teach them. This is not the number of schools that teach them. This is the number of schools we've documented that teach them in 35 states. And so what you can see, if you go back to Joshua Fishman's numbers and you've looked what we've done so far, we've done significant work, but we have a long way to go, a long way to go. So if the people who are watching this know of community-based schools, please let them know about us, about our conference, which I'll talk about in a couple minutes, about documenting their schools in our school survey. And it's very easy to document. Also, you asked about, is it only a US thing? There are community-based schools in other countries as well. It's not just a US phenomenon. At our recent conference in October, we had presenters from Canada and Australia, and they were talking about their very strong work with these schools and their government's support for this work, which is very interesting. That kind of blew us away. And the rich resources that they have developed, which are available to us. We also had participants from Iceland and the Netherlands who talked about their schools, and we can learn a lot from them. And of course, this happened because we met online. So that opened us up significantly.
So there's an advantage of the pandemic.
Yes.
And to the title of this presentation, or maybe the subtitle, this the hidden treasures in our neighborhoods. Joy, this is exactly what we're talking about. Right. 6,000 schools in the 80s and more, surely more now. They really are in our neighborhoods and we don't know about them. And that's what the survey is.
That's absolutely right. And even one group of schools, like the Tamil schools, they don't know about the schools teaching the other languages. So we're trying to connect them all.
That's right. Very important work. And Tommy, now I'm going to ask you to tell us a little bit more about these schools. What are their goals, their characteristics, and why do they matter? Why should parents put all this effort into sending their children there?
Well, I think although the majority of the community-based language schools, their approach is still kind of like traditional one, meaning teacher-led classroom practices. But I think the best part of community-based schools is that almost every community-based school I know of, they have built-in rich cultural components in each classroom in every grade. We talk about the cultural activities such as crafts, folk dances, cooking classes, and major festival events. Every culture has their own festival, and festival events probably is the best time and events to introduce students and their families about their heritage. And this cultural immersion approach, I think, is probably the most significant value in the community-based schools. And so, hidden treasure. This is the one I think most mainstream school system probably will not be able to provide to that extent. In addition, thank you, Maria. In the past 2 years, you've been helping us promoting the PBL, the project-based learning. So the teachers are increasingly using the interesting and engaging activities and materials. And top with the inquiry-based learning. So we can group the students and do the group project and help them to have the language proficiency level raised up to the level we want them to be. Now for the parents, I think parents have different perspectives. This is probably one of the challenges about community-based schools. There are parents who think weekend schools, just something for them to have some exposure, not a whole lot, so they can have identity being recognized or grouped together. And there are parents who think the heritage language is a must. They treat that almost like a mother tongue. So deal with different parents, and it is a challenge for school, for community-based school, to satisfy all these parents' expectations. However, I think I can use somewhat success stories. We have a family in the Chinese School of Delaware. They have 2 daughters, lovely daughters, and they are not typical heritage families. Mother can speak Chinese, but father cannot. And so mother, obviously in the beginning, wants to keep the heritage going. So she sent her daughters to the school, but her father was very, very supportive. Right? Even right now, they have graduated, they still support our school. So over the years, they rely on the Chinese school, what we call immersion teaching style. So they learn in the classroom, and they actively participate almost every activities, either at school or at home. So actually their language proficiency actually is almost similar, if not higher, than our traditional heritage family students. So I guess for parents, really, they have a lot of choices as well. If they want their children to learn more language to increase language proficiency, if the mainstream school cannot provide that kind of an environment, and community-based school actually is a very, very good alternative because they have compared to others, pretty rich resources. And for those parents who think the community-based school is just a place for the similar children, they can get their identity recognized, and parents think they can teach them at home, which is fine also, because identity recognition is also part of the important goal for all the community-based schools.
You're absolutely right about what these schools provide in terms of enrichment. And you mentioned immersion as an approach in the example school, in the example that you gave us about the mother who spoke Chinese. But in addition to immersion, what are some other approaches that that schools, that community-based heritage language schools use for teaching the language?
Well, it depends on the school. For example, like I can use one like cooking and a folk dance. Okay, those are immersion because a lot of terms, a lot of ways to teach you have to use heritage language. So you can get different feelings, different mood. And sometimes it's very difficult to explain that in pure English. So students, while they are doing something and with the direct exposure of the target language, I think this is what I call immersion approach, is that they get both. They get the language usage, but they also apply that language usage right away.
And they have fun doing it. I mean, who doesn't
Oh,
like
yes.
to cook and produce something,
Yeah.
right? So it's a good way to learn a language. And Tammy, I know you were a parent, you are a parent, and your children attended the Chinese School of Delaware, and you were very heavily involved in that. Can you tell us a little bit more about that experience? What was it like for your children? How old were they when they attended? How many years did they participate? And what were some high points for them and for you?
I have 4 children. They
Oh,
all graduated from Chinese School of Delaware. So yeah, that made me pretty proud. Although I have to say there are many, many, many times they want to quit because practically I took away their weekends ever since they are like 5 years old, all the way to 10th grade. That's as far as we go in our school. So every weekend they have to come with me whether they like it or not. However, I did notice something very, very interesting. My first daughter, she went to Chinese school because she had to. Okay, so as a parent, I say, you go to Chinese school no matter what. And she did not, really, she just said, okay, I'm a good girl. I listen to my dad, so I went. But in her high school, uh, they were talking about a world history. And they divided into several different continent or culture. Now, Asia, of course, is under my daughter's lead. And all of a sudden, I noticed that she started to dig out those old textbooks. And because right now, she started to feel she is playing a very important role in this group project. And her classmates at that point all look up to her because obviously she was the expert, I guess. So she dedicated herself and came up with, well, to me, I think I was impressed with this world history project. She used everything she learned from Chinese school uh, to into her project, and she led the whole group, and they completed. So they were in my house in their little room, and for like about 10 days. They finished the posters and they learned some characters. So even now she's a mother, and she now and she and my son-in-law insist. So now my granddaughter is also attending Chinese school in Chicago, and amazingly, because I guess this immersion exposure, I guess both at home and at school, she still remembered a lot of things she learned during her early age. And so she still can practice conversational Chinese fairly well. So that's my, yeah, so and then because of her, she influenced her sister, my second daughter. So actually my second daughter was the one of the first Chinese School of Delaware graduate actually came back and teach Chinese School as a teacher. Then both of them influenced my third daughter. So my third daughter served as the teaching aide in Chinese school for about 2 years. And then of course, all 3 sisters now, they are, they demanded my son to stick to the Chinese school, even though my son, he had a Boy Scout event. That was his biggest challenge. When he came back from the camping trip, he was always tired. And but my sisters, my wife, and they both encouraged him. They all encouraged him to finish. So as a parent, I think the community-based schools really provide something that a single family just cannot provide. that group activities, the cohort togetherness that really help to build the awareness and as also the language proficiency and the practice.
You touched on so many things, Tommy, as I was hearing you. I mean, I imagine for your family, sure, it must have been a source of tension at times to, well, it's Saturday, we all have to go, no matter how tiring the week may have been, we're all going to go to the community language school. So at times that must have been a challenge. But at the same time, it must have brought you guys together. This is an activity that we do every weekend as a family. And then we go home and we share our experiences and laugh at things that happened and, and connect with friends from there. That must have also been an activity that brought you guys together. And that must have been a very positive outcome. Then you also mentioned the history lesson. And that's another benefit of community heritage language schools. You get more than just the language. It's additional academic training. And this will all show up later on when your kids want to get into college, when they take exams, and actually when they're in school, as in the example that you gave. Now, because you're such a good dad, you bragged a lot about your kids, and you should be very proud of them. But I think this must have been a big, big sacrifice for you. And I think this is where a support group comes in. And so because parents do need a lot of support to keep this going, no matter how committed they are. And now I'm going to turn to you, Joy, to tell us about the Coalition of Community-Based Heritage Language Schools. What is this? Why should parents join it? And how can they join it?
Okay, thank you. Well, the coalition is a strong group of educators, researchers, and language advocates, and some parents, but these people include parents, who work in schools and with schools and advocate for these schools. So the coalition connects with leaders of these schools who are, as we've been saying, parents. Here's one example. I'll just show you two examples of Brase in Washington, D.C., and the Czech and Slovak School of North Carolina. And the founders and leaders of those schools are part of our coalition core team. So together, we're seeking to facilitate communication and information and resource sharing among the schools and across languages. As I said before, that's so important, across the languages. Sometimes at our conferences, we set up language groups. Meet with your language group. Let's have all the Brazilian Portuguese. And sometimes people say, no, actually, we want to meet by our region. We don't want to be confined to our language. So definitely across languages. Another goal is to increase the visibility and recognition of these schools within the US education system at the local, the state, and the national levels. And of course, you're helping us to do this by giving us this opportunity to talk about the schools. Also, as I mentioned before, document places where the languages are being taught and what's happening in these schools, how they're being run, how often they meet. There's a lot of very interesting information that we collect in the school survey, which I mentioned before. So I'll emphasize again, if you're in a community-based school, please complete the survey. It'll be helpful to us, and you'll find it very interesting to think about your own school. And then finally, to press for inclusion of these data in official US education statistics. There are many, many reports about language teaching in the United States, and they don't include community-based schools. So we're pushing for those to be included, and I think they will start to be. So we would love for you all to join us. You can find out about us on our website and our Facebook page. You can, if you would really, you can participate in our conference. And our next one will be next year, October 8th and 9th. And there will be, even if we meet face-to-face and we don't know, there will be a very strong online component. And the conference recordings are posted on our conference page. There's actually, from our 2019 conference, there's a wonderful, no, 2018 conference, there's a wonderful keynote address by Maria Carreira, which is posted on the webpage and well worth watching. Or you can become a language representative. These are the languages represented at this point by our language representatives. And I'll bet some of you are going to look at this and go, oh, my language is not on there. That's because we don't have a language representative in that language to connect with the schools, get the schools coming to our conference, communicate with us throughout the year. So if you would like to be on our mailing list to find out about these things, just write to me and I will add you. And there is our web page again.
I like what you said, Joy, about increasing visibility and recognition. You know, these schools are hidden treasures, but we don't want them to remain hidden treasures, right? Because, you know, there won't be the recognition that they need in order to get more funding, to get more members. And also, they're doing fantastic work that is helping thousands of children in the United States and parents. And this needs to be become well known so that other children can be helped by these schools and other parents can derive the kind of satisfaction that we saw Tommy expressing about his experiences. So let's go from hidden to unhidden treasures, well-known treasures.
Unknown treasures.
Yeah,
right.
right.
After treasures.
Exactly. That's the title of next year's presentation.
Yes, yes.
And then we all know that the seal of biliteracy has taken off and it's becoming a really popular thing, and for the right reasons, because it is such an important movement in the area of recognition and visibility, increasing visibility. What is the connection, Joy, between heritage language schools and the seals of biliteracy?
Yeah, well, teachers, students, and parents are now quite recently learning about the state seal of biliteracy and the global seal, and they're getting very excited about them and eager to implement them. These seals, as you said, a couple of things that the seals bring, but they bring legitimacy to the time that the students spent in school. You know, this time that's challenging to make it happen. It brings legitimacy to that time. It shows that the students have reached language proficiency at a high level and that this has value to education leaders and to others. And it strengthens their credentials when they graduate from high school. So many school leaders are striving to learn as much as they can about these seals, how they can be awarded to the students in their district and in their state. And it differs from state to state if this is a state level effort or a district level effort.
I'm a big fan of stories. Do you have any stories to share about community-based schools and how the awarding has been done?
Yeah, I'll tell you three, and there are many other people who are working on this very hard, but I'll give you three examples. So the Association of Bulgarian Schools in America. I wonder how many people even knew that existed.
I didn't.
They are the umbrella organization for Bulgarian Saturday and Sunday schools. And one of their initiatives is for students to be awarded the global seal. That's the seal at the right of the slide, which they can achieve after they pass the written and oral ALTA test from ALTA Language Testing Services. So what you're going to see in these examples is that the tests and the methodologies differ from place to place. So there's not just one thing to do, one test to take. It depends on your district and your state. So far, students from 4 Bulgarian schools have achieved the seal in different places in the US, in Washington State, Washington, DC, California, and Georgia. And here are the students from the Bulgarian School of Seattle. And there's a picture of them with Angela Hasheva, who is the founder of Angela Hasheva, the founder of that school and the founder of the Association of Bulgarian Schools in America. And there is really helpful information about what their process has been on these web pages. A second example is Marta McCabe, who's at the Czech-Slovak School of North Carolina. I showed this slide before, but it's such a great pictures of their work. And she is working now with the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction, the World Languages section of that department, about their accepting results from an available test that they will accept. So one option they're considering is the STAMP test from Avant Assessment. That STAMP test is accepted by many states for the state seal of biliteracy. And so if this happens, the state seal of biliteracy will be part of the student's high school diploma. In the meantime, the Czech-Slovak schools in Minnesota are awarding the state seal of biliteracy, and they are using, and there's one of the students who achieved it, with his mother, Jitka Sebek, who's the one who developed the test. She received training from ACTFL, and she then developed the tests that are accepted in Minnesota, and there's his award, which is wonderful. Advanced low. So the award always says what your proficiency level is in spoken and written Czech. And then finally, Masako Douglas works with the Orange Coast Gakuen Japanese School, I hope I said that right, on both of the seals, the state seal and the global seal. So in the fall semester, she talks with the high school level teacher. So the school has high school level, not by grade level, and asks her to identify the students who will be seniors. And then the teacher works with those students, explains the two seals to them, and encourages them to apply for both seals. And she tells them to talk with their high school counselors, their Japanese teachers, about taking the AP Japanese exam at their high school. Sometimes their high school doesn't offer it. So she tries to get them to work with the counselors to arrange for them to take it at another high school. If they can't take the Japanese AP exam at any high school, they can take the Avant stamp, the stamp by Avant Assessment, and they can get the global seal. So they won't get both, but they'll get the global seal. And just to mention that California, as a state, doesn't have a list of valid tests for the state seal. So it depends on the school districts to decide what valid tests are considered. And just to mention that an award includes proof of English proficiency as well. And so they take the American College Test, ACT, or the SAT for English reading and writing. And then their seal declares their English proficiency and their Japanese proficiency at functional, working, and professional levels. And just to mention that the certificates are free, but the schools pay for the medals, which are different colors according to the proficiency level. So I hope that's enough information. It's maybe too much information, but there's 3 examples.
It's not too much information, and it's beautiful information. As I was listening to you, these are real success stories. Mm-hmm. Success stories for the students, success stories for the parents, and success stories for this educational track outside mainstream schools that is really doing wonderful work, and that needs to be known and needs to continue to grow with more members, right? So can they contact the coalition, Joy? Can any of our people who are listening to this presentation contact the coalition for more information or to get involved?
Sure, please. We are not yet. Who knows? Someday we might be a membership organization. But we're not. We welcome you, and we'll include you on our mailing list and invite you to our conference and ask you if you want to be a language representative, and you can always say no, and ask you what school. Yes, definitely contact us, and we would love to interact with you.
They will definitely interact with you. You guys, I can attest to that. They're so, Joy and Tommy Lou, whatever, the whole team is so engaged. You will love this group.
And I just want to mention, Maria, that I gave you the link to our website, and our website is hosted and updated constantly by Arturo Diaz at the National Heritage Language Center at UCLA. Maria and Arturo are strong, and the National Heritage Language Resource Center are strong partners of ours. There's so many rich things on the website. There's a whole section with a video by Maria on project-based learning. There's a section on inquiry-based learning. So those things that Tommy was talking about, there's information, and we continue to update the website. You can see on the website who all our language representatives are. So you can, what a beautiful group they are.
And what a growth-oriented group they are. You guys never stand still. You're always adding more things, and that's why you're so successful. And with this, we come to the end of our panel. Thank you for all the wonderful information you have given us, Tommy and Joy. And thank you for your work. It's so valuable. It's a really uplifting. These are really uplifting stories, and we need them now more than ever.
Thank you, Maria, for this opportunity.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.